MacBooks have never been known for gaming, except the new 16-inch models are packing a new Radeon GPU that is definitely worth benchmarking some games with. Let's have a look. Hey, welcome to Zach's Tech Turf. So there's actually a chance that I return this MacBook Pro. It costs $3,000 and it's really hard to justify, but before I return it to Best Buy, I absolutely had to run some benchmarks on it. And if you're new here and you want to see other benchmarking or PC hardware videos just like this one, then hit the subscribe button down below and also that notification bell. That way you never miss an episode. But yeah, let's check this thing out. So I do want to give a very brief tour around this device, specifically because I have a feeling that a lot of my viewers aren't really up to speed on what's inside the latest $3,000 MacBook Pros. I sure didn't before making this video. If you're only interested in the gaming benchmarks, then feel free to skip to this time frame in the video, but just know that the YouTube algorithm doesn't like when you do that, and therefore I don't like when you do that. So to start with the specs, this 16-inch MacBook Pro that I purchased from Best Buy costs $2,700 before taxes and is rocking a Core i9 CPU that's packing 8 cores and 16 threads. This is exactly what I wanted for video editing super quickly at CES this year. Make sure you check out my CES videos if you haven't already, by the way. Besides the processor, this model is sporting 16 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM clocked at 2667 megahertz, and it also has a 1 terabyte SSD. Finally, the last part that inspired me to pick up this MacBook Pro in the first place, and honestly the only part that's worthy of our benchmarking video today, that's the new Radeon GPU, which is the Radeon Pro 5500M. The 5500M is a dedicated PCIe GPU that we're starting to see in these MacBooks, and there's still the Intel UHD graphics 630, but we don't really care about that. The 5500M is boasting 4 gigabytes of GDDR6 VRAM. Now for today's testing, I did want to test these games natively with macOS Catalina if it's supported, but I also wanted to try Boot Camp. I've literally never used Boot Camp before because I'm not a Mac user, and for those of you that don't know, Boot Camp essentially allows you to install Windows on a separate partition from your hard drive, and that way you can run anything that's not supported on macOS. I was actually really surprised when I saw just how easy Boot Camp was to install. It's honestly basically just an easy to configure bootloader, so when you turn on your laptop, you have to choose between Windows or macOS. One other option of PC gaming on a Mac is to install a cloud gaming service like Shadow or NVIDIA GeForce Now for Mac. I have dedicated videos for both of those, which I'll link down in the description, and honestly with a good internet connection, they're both really great options as well. For today's testing, when I was thinking of which games to benchmark, I realized that things have come a long way in terms of game compatibility on macOS natively. Here you can see the top selling macOS games on Steam, and there's actually a ton of very modern and popular titles on here that I honestly was not expecting. The first game up for our native macOS testing was Fortnite, because I'm still very afraid to start a benchmarking run with anything other than Fortnite. I don't have exact numbers for this because I didn't want to spend the time to find something like MSI Afterburner for Mac, so here in 1440p resolution, I kept the settings at low, and the FPS actually managed to stay locked at the 144 FPS max the entire time. Now this MacBook Pro actually doesn't get up to 144 Hz, so you probably just want to increase the settings of this game and honestly the next few games that I'm about to test. Speaking of which, the next game I tested was Counter-Strike Global Offensive. I had no idea that this was also supported on native macOS, and in 1440p resolution, again with low settings, I got anywhere from 170 to 250 FPS with an average I'd say of around 200. Next up was Borderlands 3, and for this one, instead of 1440p, I had to drop the resolution down to 900p because there actually isn't anything between that to choose from with this 16-inch model, and in 900p with low settings, I got a pretty respectable 66 FPS average. And finally, I decided to fire up WoW Classic. Not really a tough to run game, but I wanted to include it to showcase all of these different games that are supported on macOS, and in the full like 3K resolution of the MacBook Pro at max level 10 graphics settings, I got an average of 90 FPS. So next up are the games that I wanted to test on Windows with Boot Camp, and up until this point, I had no idea if we would see more or less performance with Boot Camp, so I decided to try a game that we already tested natively in macOS, Borderlands 3. Here's where things got weird because it actually gave me different resolutions to choose from compared to macOS. I saw this type of weirdness in all the games, mind you, and I couldn't really select any full screen resolution except for the full 3K native resolution, and in very low settings, I actually got an average of 47. This is a way higher resolution than we tested in macOS. Only a few of the settings are a bit lower though, and this game actually ran way smoother than it did on macOS. The macOS version got a decently high FPS number, but it skipped a lot, and here on Windows it ran buttery smooth. Next up were some games that I didn't test on macOS because they actually weren't compatible. These are Windows only games, and the first one I fired up was Rainbow Six Siege, and with the built-in benchmark in 1200p resolution and ultra settings, I got an average of 110 FPS. This game also ran like butter. And finally, the last game in this benchmarking run was Gears 5. This is a brand new AAA game on a MacBook Pro, just to jog your memory, and in 1080p and high settings, I got an average of 56 FPS. So yeah, as you can see, the MacBook Pro is certainly capable of cranking out some very impressive FPS numbers. I'm pretty sure that you're going to consistently get better results if you run the game on Windows, even if it's supported by macOS natively, and therefore in turn, you can essentially run any game that you want to on a new MacBook Pro. Now, you're not getting anywhere close to the numbers that you would get with a comparable price custom PC, but for those of you that really want a MacBook Pro for things other than gaming, you now have the ability to play pretty much any game that you want, provided you have a Windows boot camp properly configured. Well, there you have it. That's going to wrap up my testing for PC gaming on a MacBook Pro here in 2020. As always, drop a comment down below and let me know if you think I should return the MacBook Pro or if I should eat the $3,000 and keep it for myself. And after that, feel free to head on over to one of these two videos if you haven't seen them yet, and definitely hit that subscribe button, because coming up next, another 2 ways to build a gaming PC. You don't want to miss that video.